There we go. All right. Good afternoon, folks. It's Comics Workshop with Marek Bennett, MarekBennett.com. And today we're working on some more pages for the Freeman Colby Civil War Diary graphic novel series. So let's dive right into it. Let's see, I have pulled up here. We're going to do a practice page, and then we'll dive into some of the pages that we drew just yesterday in the live draw. So here's our practice page. And I am using GIMP image manipulation program. It's free, downloadable freeware, so you can download it at gimp.org, I think. And this is a page that takes place, we're right in the middle of a scene here. We're in the US Capitol building, and Vice President Hamlin is just introducing the very first woman to ever address the US Congress as a public speaker. The hall is filled with all the notables of the US federal government. The date is January 1864. And this is Annie E. Dickinson, who is on a platform down by the speaker's desk in the Congress. So what I want to look at here is how we're going to digitally process this artwork. So if you look carefully, we've gone through this before. I've drawn this out with my pencil and my pen and my marker, so it's in black ink. And I erased all the pencil lines, so it's just a black ink drawing. But if we look in closely, that black ink, as the scanner sees it in the computerized digital image, is not really black at all. It's all sorts of grays. So what I need to do first is I'll zoom out a little bit. And we also have noticed this little scratch and dust and speckle there. So we need to get rid of those things and make all the black ink pure black. So my technique is I go in and I blur it slightly. And that takes a moment on such a large 600 dots per inch grayscale file. If I zoom in, you'll see the effect undo. That's the original. Redo, blurred. So that kind of smooths over all the different grays that you get in the pixels. And then we can go, and you'll also see the dust and scratches here get a little bit blurred, and they get a little bit smudged out, right? Okay, so now we can go into this, and we will choose colors threshold. And what the threshold does is it forces every pixel to decide whether it's black or white. And you can see the effect there on that image. If I say lighter pixels will turn black, we'll get a heavier line. If I say darker pixels will be considered white, we'll get a lighter line, to the point of not being able to read it at all. And in the other direction, it'll get too dark if I choose too many. We'll get too many dust and scratches if I set that midpoint, that watershed point, too far light. So let's go somewhere in the middle so we get a nice clear line. Okay, I'm going to back up. Now this entire picture is all black and white, no gray pixels left at all. All right, I'm going to go in and crop this down also. This is now my black and white version of this. I will go to Image, Crop to Selection. I selected it there with my rectangular select tool. And one thing that I notice with this, we're not going to spend a full time on this one picture. We're going to just warm up here. So here's our Vice President Hamlin introducing her. And what I want to try with this is I want to convert his background to all black and then leave a white circle as if he's in sort of a spotlight. So we bring the attention down to him. He would be in the footlights at the stage there in this time before electrical spotlights. So I'm going to use my magical wand tool. It's set to select. So I'll just click in here and it will select all the white pixels that go around our Vice President Hamlin here. Now, if I convert that to black, for instance, I'm leaving this as a grayscale image, by the way. So if I go in here and I do invert value, all the white pixels will turn black, but then we'll lose all that writing there, right? We won't be able to read that in the final version, and we lose his jacket and everything too. So let's undo that, and let's select that writing first. So I'll take my lasso tool, set to add, which adds whatever I select to the current selection. You can set it to add or subtract or union or just straight select. There, so we just added all those black pixels to to the white area. And that means if I come in and I do my value invert, boom, there we go. We kept those words as white. We do have this issue of having him disappear against the black background. So let's keep this selection going here. And we'll come in here and take a pencil. We'll switch our colors so we have our foreground. Our ink color is now white. That means I can write and draw in white just in this selection like that. We won't do that though. I think what I'll do, actually, I'm going to give myself a huge brush. So this brush is 20 pixels wide. It's pretty small, right? I'm going to give myself a huge brush. Let's go to like 131.9 pixels wide. And with this big brush, we can carve out an arc around him, a circle around him. Let's give ourselves even a bigger brush. The bigger the brush, the smoother the circle will be. Let's carve around our vice president. And then we can just kind of white around him, and that's going to draw the attention to him. That curve will come down to here. And we'll white around him. There we go. Let's zoom out and see how that looks. Yeah, that looks like he's standing in a spotlight against the shadows. I did notice these large brushes leave a little bit of an artifact at the very top there. It looks kind of digital, pixely. So I'll go in with a smaller brush. I'll get rid of that. There we go. And now let's see. Anything else we want to clean up? I noticed this word bubble gets a little close to the words, so I might go in there with my white paint here and just push it back a little bit. My take on Hannibal Hamlin is he was a little bit out over his head or something. He just seems a little at sea sometimes in the history. So I made his speaking kind of shaky, like, ladies and gentlemen, I give you, he's not exactly emphatic. Let's do that one more time in this panel, and then that will be all our warm up, and we'll move on to our actual panel here. So again, I'm going to select the white background. In this case, I think the clapping will have to go, how are we going to do that clapping? That'll have to be white, black text on white background. We'll just have to paint around it. I think these lines can be white against the black, so we'll invert them too. And now I will invert those colors, and we will go in with our big paintbrush. What did we say, around 200 some? We'll go in with our big paintbrush, and we'll paint the white circle around our vice president here. And I think we'll even paint down close around his hand. And then we'll just keep painting as if the clapping is part of that light. I was thinking the clapping would be white text on black, but now that I look at it, I think that's going to look kind of funky because it comes in so close to him. So let's go with this. And we can always do an alternate take where we do invert that clapping. Select all, and that's how it's going to look. Okay, this was Joan of Arc, and then we zip down to her. Now, this same practice, the same approach is going to apply to this panel. I think we'll want the background pretty black. Here, we may want the background just fully lit with these magical lines around her as she gathers her energy to speak. That's Annie E. Dickinson, first woman to address the U.S. Congress as a public speaker there in the Capitol to a full house in January 1864. So I'm going to convert this for now, mode convert to an indexed color mode, and we'll say 1-bit palette, which means all the pixels are just either 1 or 0, black or white. Convert, and we'll save it. I'm just going to save it to my desktop for now. I'll integrate it into my file of pages later. And I'm going to, since this is still a temp file, I'm going to compress it with LZW compression. That makes it a super tiny file to save. However, you can't print from an LZW file. All right. So now I'm going to close that down. Actually, I'm going to keep that open, and we'll go to our pages from yesterday. So here are 2 pages scanned together on my flatbed scanner. So the first page we drew in the live draw, where I was making, I I was making Annie E. Dickinson I was trying to kind of figure out how she moved, how she spoke. She's calling the Democrats of 1864, the pro-slavery, pro-compromise, anti-war Democrats. She calls them the mass of revolting life under a stone suddenly upheaved from its long resting place. And I was trying to draw her dramatically acting this out. Then I realized, I really need to stick to my sources a little more. So I went back and I redrew that with less acting, still the fiery language, but I reorganized the page. And this is what we're going to work on here. I'm just going to save this, saved with LZW compression. I'll save it as it is. And then I'm going to create its own page here of this second version. I'm going to keep that one that we did in the live draw. It's kind of interesting to look back at alternate takes of these pages. Who knows? I may go back and use some part of it. So once again, let's see, we'll just save this as second version of that, saved. Okay, now we can always go back to that saved file and get that raw scan if we need to. But as we know, we're going to go in and blur this slightly. So we'll let those pixels blur. Takes a second. There we go. And then we're going to go in and do the threshold. And we'll set it to a little darker than that. There we go. Now all the pixels are either black or white. I think we'll do the same effect. We'll give her a spotlight around her. And we may want to, we'll tailor it to these words, because these words will be white against a black background. She will be in a white halo, and then her hands might go out of it a little bit as she reaches. So let's select all the white background there. Oh, look, there's a lot of dust and scratches in there, but we'll leave those. We'll select everything we want to be contained in this pixel inversion. So we're going to, we want this black text to become white. I think the dots of her continued ongoing long speech will also want to be white against a black background. So I'm selecting those two. This is like the starry night skies in our spaceship drawings too, right? Same technique. And let's see, this just takes a little bit of clicking, but hopefully it'll be worth it. I'm hoping these dots don't make it look like, Woodstock in Peanuts just saying, di-di-di-di-di-di. Her words are really important, but I don't have a transcript of her speech. So I'm hoping the dots will stand in for lots and lots of speaking. She talks very fast with the most perfect confidence. But then the issues, as she would say, Negro rights, equal pay for all soldiers, civil rights, constitutional amendments. I'll probably move that text. The issues will kind of jump to the fore. So the reader will see what she's talking about without knowing exactly what she's saying. And boom, we're done with that panel. It should be a quick read, I think, hopefully. Let's see. So we need to, now that we've selected this, we will invert the panels. All right, there she is against a black background, totally lost against the black background. So we won't get rid of that selection yet. We'll go back to our enormous paintbrush, 200 plus pixels wide. And we have our ink set to white. So we should be able to trace out a highlighting spotlight around her, drawing our attention to her on this platform. They built a special platform for her in front of the, what is it, the rostrum, where the Speaker of the House sits and where they conduct business. She wasn't, I don't think she was actually up in the place where the where the US representatives and congressmen of the time made their speeches, but they made her a special platform, and she could walk back and forth across it as she delivers this lecture. It's so fascinating that the US Congress, or the radical Republicans that controlled the House of Representatives at this time, invited this young woman to speak, breaking such a break with precedent. She's the first woman to address the US Congress here in this hall. And she's 21 years old Annie E. Dickinson. And she's not going to just make a nice speech and recite some poetry and go home. She's going to sock it to him. So let's see. She gets up there. Let's zoom out. Take a look at that. That could work. I'm going to go with that for now. That's her in her spotlight. Now, the question is, in the second panel, do we do the same treatment, only expand the spotlight out to make it a little bigger, to make it a little brighter? Let's try it. Again, we're going to see how I put these sort of radiating lines in here. I wanted this magical power that she radiates, this charisma of hers, to kind of leap off the page. So I'm trying that with these radiating manga-style attention lines. Who knows if it'll work? We'll find out in a moment when we see how it looks. All right, so I'm going to have to go in with my additive lasso. A lasso set to add, set to stun, and add in those radiating lines so they turn white against the black background when we invert this background. And then we'll put, oh, let's get some of those little worms and filth dropping off of her scornful line here about the Democratic Party. You have to remember the Democratic Party in 1864 is not the Democratic Party of 1964 or 2020. The Democrats to Annie E. Dickinson are the pro-slavery party. Right? They are the party that favors compromise with the South, even in the middle of the Civil War, even as it's starting to feel like the war is already decided. It's just a matter of time, right? This is like Gettysburg has been won. The South has retreated from its second invasion of the North. They're still fighting, I guess, in Chattanooga. Sherman has not captured Atlanta yet. Grant has not yet gotten down towards Richmond yet, not yet laid siege to Richmond and Petersburg. However, a lot of people are saying, yeah, it's just a matter of time. How long can the South hold out? And the Democratic Party in the North, the Copperheads, were saying, let's make peace. Let's come up with a peace accord to preserve these two countries, the Confederate States of America and the United States. And so Lincoln, of course, is arguing against that. But he's not radical enough for Dickinson. All right, let's invert this. Boom, and we'll put that spotlight around her. We need our big brush, our big pen. Let's go to like 250 pixels. And we'll zip this circle around her like this. We lost some of those lines there. And her hand sticking up into there, we would lose that if we lost the selection. So let's go in with a slightly smaller brush and just outline her hand. That's the trick with stick figures. They don't overlap things very well. You can lose them a lot very easily. All right. So hopefully as we flip to this page, hopefully this page will look like this young woman in a darkened room. It's late at night, or it's in the evening, January in Washington, it's dark. So she, in the Capitol here, there would be lights on the stage, footlights illuminating her. There's probably some lights on the walls, but we want to bring the attention in to her giving her speech. And delivering these lines to the government, to a room full of Republicans and Democrats who are debating whether or not to continue the Civil War. So then I came down here and there were people shouting and cheering and waving flags. I'm thinking we'll keep it simple here. I'm just going to select this. I'll put a gentle black line separating the crowd from the text. Actually, a little lower than that. Separating the crowd from and their noises from the narration of Sarah Lowe's letter. Then I'm going to go in with my magic wand set to subtract, and I'll subtract all this stuff down below here. So then, oh, let's go in with the lasso set to add, and we'll select all the text. And now when I invert it, you'll see we just have that top part of the panel selected. So let's try inverting it now. And there you go. We've got sort of the crowd lights up. Now the attention is to the crowd. So the white spotlight attention comes to the crowd as they react. The whole scene was worth seeing and not to be forgotten. Now, oh, there's a lot of artifacts here. See those little black dots and lines from the corrections I made? That is, I'll show you this. This is interesting. On the page itself, I made a bunch of changes to the page. So this panel was originally over here. I redrew it. I cut it out and glue sticked it. See the seam there? I glue sticked it over. I glue sticked this whole panel and new panel in here. See, that's a separate piece of paper, right? So I really patch up. This is a real Frankenstein kind of page, the final page. And there's corrections on the panels themselves of little pieces that I clipped out and glue sticked in there, right? So all those patches, when we scan it in, you end up seeing them. They look like this. Where is it? There it is. There's a seam, right? So I'll just go over that with my white pixel ink. Make sure that's gone. Oh, there's another seam. We don't want that in the page because it makes the page look kind of ragged. And we don't want to distract people from the story. While I'm in here, I may clean up a few of these letters that have some inky artifacts on them. Going with a smaller brush and just get rid of some of those little odds and ends of ink. Okay, now I'm thinking this will be all black behind Sarah Lowe because I want the attention on her. So I need my original classic magic wand tool, my lasso set to add to get this text and her emoticons. And let's try inverting that. Invert, whoops, we got the chair behind Miss Felton too, but that's okay. We're going to go in with our white ink, the larger brush, and we're going to trace around each of these characters just to make sure, whoops, that they are visible against the darkness behind them. I just do like a light little white halo, light little envelope here, and it helps bring those characters, helps them jump out, helps you see them at all since they're stick figure characters. And while we're here, we'll just do her page by hand. Okay, do her seat back by hand. I think Sarah Lowe disappears a bit too much, so I'm going to give her a narrow white outline here. Let's see how this looks against the seat back. I might even go so far as to white out the back of the seat too. And Freeman Colby's hat bill will disappear. So we'll outline that. And there we go. I'll go in with a super tiny brush, fine point brush, and we'll select everything. And we'll just bring that seat back away from his cheek. So it doesn't look like his head is pressed up against the seat back. Do that on all these sides. There's a lot of little adjustments like that where, you know, if I didn't do it, the page would probably read okay. But if I have the time, I like to go in and just fine tune the presentation of the space and the layers of the picture. I'm thinking maybe here too, we bring that line off of her to bring her in front of the line. Here too. That pops her out in front of the line, and we can clean this up a little bit while we're here. There we go. Probably nobody's going to notice that, but I kind of like to know it's taken care of. I'm also thinking this little line here now looks out of place. That looks a little better. You know, I may go back and just black in those seat backs too. Anyways, I'll worry about that later if it's bothering me. So last step, I'm going to, let's do our wand tool set to subtract. I'll select the whole picture. I'll subtract all the white space around it. And then I'll crop to selection. So that cuts it down, except there's a little pixel off to the side There's one little bit of dust and scratch. So we'll wipe that out and we'll look for the other one. Do you see it? Oh, I saw another right there. Lots of little details to account for here. There it is. See that pixel right there? Little dust and scratch from the scanner. Now when I remove all that area and crop to selection, it'll crop it right down to the edges of those panels. I will convert this image mode to an indexed color, 1-bit palette, as usual. And then we'll just export it or save it. I'm going to save it as a separate file so I can always go back to my original file. So I just add a little 2 on the end, or I added a black and white or something like that so I know what the versions are. And now I have a finished page. And I kind of like how that makes her look with a spotlight in around her, and she's delivering her speech. The information, the content she has, the dramatic delivery, and the audience reaction. Yeah, I like how this looks. I think I'll go with it. I'll keep drawing the story and maybe come back and edit more later. One thing I noticed we do need to edit, actually. Since I drew Sarah Lowe in the center here with Miss Felton on one side and Freeman Colby on the other, I'm going back to this page and noticing I drew them in a different order. So let's fix that while we're thinking of it. So I'm just going to take my lasso tool, set to select. I'm going to go and select Sarah Lowe first. And we will edit, cut her out, and paste her right back in as her own. Actually, you know what? Let me undo that. Let's take our magic wand tool, set to subtract, and we'll subtract all this white space around her. Now, when we cut her out, just her little figure goes. We'll paste her back in, and we'll make her a separate layer. So now I can grab her and move her around. And I'm going to, well, I'll have to move Miss Felton too. All right, so let's move Miss Felton the same way. Oh, we've got some comments here. I haven't been watching the comments. Jay Guitar says, have you ever thought about doing animation? Oh, I think about it. That's for sure. Jay Dickinson says, Dickinson, yes, I meant to ask, are you related to Anna E. Dickinson, the abolitionist feminist lecturer and mountain climber of the mid to late 19th century? She lived until 1932, though. An amazing woman. And Chris, watching your process has been really interesting. Oh, thank you, Chris. It's good to know that this is of interest to you. Sometimes I feel like I'm showing people how to invert pixels and do all this obscure stuff. But, you know, this is part of, it's kind of cool to see the cartooning and the way you sort of slash ink on the paper and make the pictures happen and tell the story. And then just as important is getting into the nitty gritty pixels here and pulling the picture apart. Let's go back to this layer and subtract the white space. Cut, paste, and this is our Miss Felton layer. All right. And pulling the picture apart and seeing, you know, the little edits you have to make. I tend to spend about as much time doing this kind of work as I do actually drawing my books. So that tells me maybe I need to draw more carefully. No, just I think it comes from doing these complicated stories. So how does that look? That's going to be in the right order. Should they be a little closer? I threw Freeman Colby into this scene because remember earlier this week we saw Miss Sarah Lowe said, we took a soldier from the hospital because they couldn't go as women alone in 1864 could not just go out to the Capitol, right? And it was not expected. They needed to have a chaperone. So they took a soldier. She says it in the same way they'd say, like, we took a horse or a carriage. We took a soldier so they could attend this event. All right, I need to flatten image. There's our command. We'll flatten those down. I see there's a couple little spots where we can bring those lines out and flesh out that, clean up that image. Let's check on Miss Felton here. White lines coming down. There we go. And then we back up, and now we have them in the right order, which makes a difference to me. If I'm putting this into a graphic novel and we're going to print up lots and lots of copies of it and get it out to people all around my town or my state or my country or the world, I kind of want it to be right before we make all those copies. So I want to make the fixes now before it goes into the book. So let me just save that. And that page will turn or face this page. And we'll get to see Miss Dickinson make her speech in the spotlight. That's cool. Well, thanks for joining us today, folks. I think we're going to be, we'll be done for now. And I'm going to go save these. I'll put them into my demo book. You know, I have a little mini version of the Freeman Colby books as I'm working on them, so I can read through and see how they read in book format. So I'll go do that, try how it works. I may come back and make some more changes. And the next step of the storyline that I'm working on now is Abraham Lincoln's going to walk in. President and Mrs. Lincoln are going to walk in when she's in the middle of a speech critiquing his war policy. So she is going to just go all out and really embarrass President Lincoln because I think he didn't realize he was attending a political speech being made on federal government property. So interesting, these stories we find way back in our past that really speak to what's going on today. So thanks for joining us, folks. I see the sun is going to make this hard to read. MarekBennett.com. If you want to join the Patreon, patreon.com/MarekBennett. You get all the invitations to the live draws and books in the mail and stuff like that. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a wonderful Thursday. And we'll see you again soon to do some more new artwork and process some more pages. All right. Bye, everybody.